Hello and welcome to another episode of Minnesota Liberty Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Rebecca Whiting, and I have with me TJ Hawthorne. And the podcast is sponsored by the Libertarian Party of Minnesota. Sorry, I did that in the wrong order. But this evening we have a special guest with us, Miss Nikki Holiday, and I will let her introduce herself and let her tell you everything that she has to say and what we're going to talk about this evening, because she's got a very important story that I want to, kind of help facilitate for it to get out. First, do we have any? Our convention was last week, and you weren't there.
I know.
Yes, I can't talk to myself about it, so maybe we'll do that next week.
Yeah.
But it was a good time, and we missed you. We had a lot of good speakers. We had the Legislative Evaluation Assembly. We had American Experiment. Senator Nate Wiesenberg showed up. Representative Drew Roach came. Let's see, we had...
My wife was in town here in D.C. and we were, out and about. But every time I would look online and I'd see the socials, I'd catch the live goings on and see. I was missing.
Yeah. We flew through the business on Saturday, and we got everything done. Plus we had 6 speakers. And so Sunday we already pushed back the start of the convention late. And then just the way it worked out, we started even later than that, maybe 20 minutes later than that. And we were still done by 10:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, this is what can happen with a good, a group of people who have committed to working together, and the
preparedness too. I was very impressed with last year's preparedness. I'm sure it was just prepared this year too. The business end stuff, the doing the homework beforehand.
Right. Well, and Eric and Joey really took that on, and Chip with the platform and bylaw stuff, and they had everything like in a nice, neat package, and so it was very clear cut. But the only thing that didn't pass was that there was an effort to try and replace our platform that's kind of long and specific with a generalized, much shorter platform, and that didn't pass. But
anyways. Interesting. I really wish I could have taken place in that debate. I'm sure.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was a lot of discussion, a lot of back and forth about, the merits of having a specific platform versus like a generalized set of principles and philosophy. And that's kind of what it was. But in the end, it didn't pass. There were certain things people were like, but I don't want to let this go, So
right. Yeah.
Lost in a generalized platform. But anyways, there are a few big things happening. Trump is still essentially brand new in office, right? And he's been going at full speed since his inauguration. And this week he decided to pick a fight with Thomas Massie, Representative Thomas Massie from Kentucky. Out of all the people in Congress to pick a fight with, I feel like that wasn't well thought out.
I know. Why can't he just let the nay vote slide? They're getting it passed and whatever. He had to step it up and escalate this with that one tweet that went viral, or I don't know if it was a True Social screenshot or whatever it was, but needs to be primaried now, it's laughable. The folks, it's his district and he's going to be elected. Now, I think he actually has a great chance. Possibly, I'd imagine. I've been hearing things of him running for McConnell's seat there in Kentucky as a senator. And that would be really interesting. I think that would be awesome. I think he would have that much more power, as 1/100th of the.
Yeah, I don't know how many representatives Kentucky gets. Minnesota gets 8, right? We have 8. Kentucky, I don't know how many they get. But everybody gets 2 senators, so... there's a lot less senators, and their term is longer. So, those are the 2 things. And, our senators, Klobuchar and Tina Smith.
We'll see. We'll see how this little rift between Massey and Trump, I think is maybe causing a great separation that could be beneficial to us as libertarians and as the Libertarian Party, right? Where
Yep.
they've got somewhere to go, where they know that, hey, all right, damn it, I'm tired of watching this can be kicked down the road constantly, and let's join over here. We'll see.
Well, and see, here's the thing: Trump really he used the libertarian label as a way to help get himself elected. But he did.
He sure did. Oh, no doubt.
And
Elon's been posting all kinds of Rothbard stuff and all kinds of libertarian stuff.
But the message of comply or die is antithetical to what he essentially used as a to propel himself forward for his campaign. The one probably the truest libertarian in Congress, and then saying, but you have to. I mean, there's a lot of people that would take the libertarian label, but they really don't know. They don't understand what it means.
No,
they haven't
not
internalized it. They don't get it. They're just like, oh, this just means freedom. No, and there's a lot more to it than just that. So,
Hey, we should get Nikki involved here. She's been hanging out, listening to us rant about this libertarian stuff, and Todd's out there giving us hell on the comments.
Oh, I forgot to open up the chat. Yeah.
So
is actually,
I'm interested, actually, Nikki. Let's hear what you got to say. And tell us where you're from, what you're about, and what you would like us to hear.
Okay. Thanks, TJ and Rebecca. First, I'm honored that you guys invited me here. This is a great platform and space. My name is Miss Nikki, and I am a national legal advocate specialist from the West Coast, but I now live in Florida. But I'm a truck driver, so I'm kind of move around everywhere. But I have been a legal advocate since about 2010 for various cases, missing persons, wrongful conviction, wrongful arrest, being abused by the police, over sentencing, this kind of thing. So I settled in with, I've met so many people along the way, and I met Jason Soul in Minnesota years ago, and he asked me to look at this case. He said, hey, there's this guy, Philip Vance, and I'd really like you to take a look at the case. So I took a week and I reviewed the case a couple times. I read it front to back because I wanted to really understand and feel what it was, because you can get caught up in the legal jargon and verbiage. And I really wanted to know like what it really was and him as a person. So I'll jump in. It's Philip Vance. He's a native of Florida, but he was in Minnesota with family at a young age, like 17, 18, and was there and, just finding his footing as a young man on his own, and became a victim of what we call the Minnesota injustice system. So I'll jump into, do you want me to keep going?
Oh yeah, for sure.
No, I'm in.
You have the floor right now.
Okay, perfect. So police corruption and unethical acts in Minnesota is what led to this wrongful conviction. He was convicted in 2004 wrongfully and was imprisoned in 2003, which I say illegally because it was all obtained wrongfully. So I feel like he's been, caged illegally for all these years. On December, I'm going to give a quick summary, TJ, since you don't really know a lot about the case, and then for the viewers as well. So on December 22nd, 2002, there was a robbery that occurred at Sabrine's in South St. Paul. I'm going to shed a little bit of information along the way. So if you guys have questions, just let me know. Sabrine's was in an area in South St. Paul that was run by the Latin Kings. If anybody knows anything about the gang setup, the Latin Kings, you don't get free access to roam their neighborhoods. And this was in, like I said, in 2002. Especially Black men, you do not roam in Latin King territory. You're not free to be there. You have to be escorted in, escorted out. So that's a little bit about that area. I want to just drop for a moment, and then I'll go back to that. But so in 2002, December 22nd, 2002, there was a robbery at Sabrine's that led to the murder of the clerk, Khaled Al-Bakri. He was 25 years old at the time. And Philip became a suspect immediately. However, was not interviewed for an entire month, was not pursued for a month. Nobody asked about his name anyways, but the police in their documentation made him a suspect immediately. The Metro Gang Strike Force was very heavy during that time, from like 95 to 2009 when they were disbanded by the FBI. Now, the Metro Gang Strike Force was a task force, not an employment service. And what that means is they pulled cops and city managers and city planners and whoever they could into this task force from multiple municipalities, cities, and counties. Therefore, they didn't have to report like they do as an employer. They didn't have to say who was on duty for the task force. If that officer was on duty in Brooklyn Park, he was on duty in Brooklyn Park. They didn't document that they were with the task force that particular night. It was a lot of under the radar stuff happening. So
imagine
I'm leading into all this. So and so that's the Metro Gang Strike Force caused a lot of terror in all of Minnesota, a lot of terror, a lot of trauma. Not only were they corrupt, like unethically, but they were criminals. They were abusive. Some of the
I remember
abuse
a lot of
behind
that.
them, yeah, a lot of the abuse behind them isn't just like beating up a guy to arrest him. It was like sexual assault, sodomy, like stealing property that wasn't connected to a
lots
case.
of property.
Horrible. And then selling property for their own personal gain in other states, like cars, drugs, whatever. Okay, I'm going to leave that off. There is something that I want to ask the audience at some point. So, and we'll just leave that question out there. So that's kind of the Metro Gang Strike Force came in. They handled the investigation. They brought everything to Kathy Keena. Like, okay, we got this guy. We got this guy that robbed the Sabrines and he killed the guy. And they hand delivered it to Kathy Keena. Kathy Keena was the Dakota County prosecutor at the time. She was the first female in that position in Dakota County to ever be elected into that position. She'd only been in that position for a year and a half when this crime occurred. I say that because I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt at the beginning of this podcast. And I'm going to say she was green. She was green. She was eager. She wanted to be the hero of her community. I'm going to give her that benefit of the doubt right now. But as I unfold the story, we're going to share a little bit different about Kathy Keena. So that's how it occurred. Now, backing up a little bit. A year before this robbery and murder occurred, Philip Vance was arrested with a stolen gun. However, this gun he obtained because somebody was going to use it to harm one of his friends. So he did take the gun so that it couldn't be used to harm one of his friends. The gun was never traced to a crime, he didn't get caught during a crime with the gun. It was like somebody snitched. Hey, he's got this gun. They found the gun on him. That's what it was. So he did do, he did deal with that legally. He had to deal with that. Now, here's the first question I'm going to pose. How did he have jailhouse informants on his case for the wrongful conviction that knew about the case that he met a year before the robbery and the murder ever happened? How did these jailhouse informants know that they were going to need to say something to a crime that hadn't even happened yet? So that's my
talking like his cellmates from those previous crimes were
Correct.
Witnesses in this crime?
Correct. How does that occur? And I'm just posing this question I want this to be a thought-provoking thing for people that are watching this, because I want to really unwrap how this occurred. So that's one thing I want to say. These jailhouse informants, he met a year before the robbery and the murder ever occurred, but they were informants on the robbery and the murder. Okay.
And to be clear, I have heard this story before, but this is the first time TJ's hearing it. So
yeah, so that's why I'm going to pause. Do you have? We can dig into some questions before I keep going.
No, go ahead. No,
okay. I just want to make sure. So, so that's one thing. Like, if you think about that, there was no DNA evidence. There's no eyewitness account. There's absolutely nothing that connects Phillip Vance to even the store. There's nothing that connects him to the crime. And when a photo lineup was taken to the employees at Sabrine's, the regular full-time employees, Phillip Vance and his co-defendant photo were in that lineup, and they said they'd never seen either one of them in the store. Never seen them. So, so nothing connected him to Sabrine's. Phillip has said from day one he's innocent. I want to say that, like, Phillip is innocent. Phillip is innocent. He stood on that from the beginning, and he said he never knew about Sabrine's. He'd never been in that store. He didn't know anything about this crime, and so that's a one thing. Now, go ahead.
When you mentioned earlier that is a Latin Kings neighborhood, is that important because that's why he's never been in the neighborhood? Is that
correct? Kind of that's very important. Like, if you look in the chat, some people, there's Brianna Hooper in her dad is also wrongfully convicted in the state of Minnesota, and she's saying it's true, that's a Latin King neighborhood. My father got beat up by the Latin Kings and almost died. So people in Minnesota are familiar that if this is a neighborhood that's deemed Latin King neighborhood, you don't tread there freely.
I know TC will know what it is, but it's show me the man and I'll give you the crime, or show me the man and I'll show you the crime. It's not new. I mean, it's really horrible that our folks that we're entrusting with this peacekeeping are using that authority and corrupted. We're all aware of this happening too. This is what really sucks, is that we're all aware of all the corruption that's happening all over the place. And so many folks are like, well, it is what it is. So
well, and they don't even hide it. I mean, because who's gonna?
What are you gonna do?
People from the top down are complicit. Who are you gonna complain to? They don't care.
Right. And they're all in bed together. Like, if you really think about it, they're all in bed together, even though, like, they say, oh, we're this office and we're investigating this office. You're still under the state of Minnesota. The governor's still writing the same it's still the same guy signing the paycheck. That's the thing about it. So I want to say that so Phillip was convicted wrongfully, and he's currently serving a life sentence. What's crazy is how they were able to, with no evidence, no tying to him, they were able to secure not just, I'm scrolling through my notes real quick, so much I don't want to miss anything. He was ultimately charged and convicted with I know first degree murder. That's the life sentence. So hold on one second.
So they think it was premeditated, and they'd have no evidence.
They did believe, yeah, exactly. Isn't that, yeah? So okay, so okay, so they're saying so he was wrongfully convicted of first degree premeditated murder. He was wrongfully convicted of, oh, I'm sorry, my notes are out of order. Give me 1 second. This is terrible. I thought I had put this in order, and I did not. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to back up. because there's a point. I have a point. So I'll go back to that. There was 3 charges that he was wrongfully convicted of, which how did they come to that with nothing tying to him except informants and witnesses that they paid for. So this is what I want to rewind. The Metro Gang Strike Force put all the informants and the witnesses together, paid them. We have traceable amounts in excess of $2,000 that we're able to trace. We have amounts that are not traceable because the Metro Gang Strike Force destroyed a lot of evidence on all their cases, but we know for a fact on Philip's case. And the reason we know for a fact is because the car that they said was the getaway car was sold in Texas by one of the officers before the case was even over. Right. We know that. 2 recordings that they said they used at the original trial to obtain the conviction. 2 interviews, either the audio didn't work or it never existed, but it was used in his conviction as an exhibit. But we've not been able to, nobody's heard these recordings. They didn't play them at trial. Nobody's heard them. And when we go to locate them, we cannot locate these recordings that they said that they had. So the details, so currently right now, some of this I'm sharing is from the petition because the petition was filed within the last 2 weeks. And this is a post-conviction relief filing, sharing multiple Brady violations, multiple Giglio violations, and over 10 recanted testimonies stating that they were coerced, bribed, or promised something for their lie. Some of them were given scripts to say at trial, to memorize on the stand. 22 years. So he's been in there for 22 years. Petition filed. Okay. So the petition, we're challenging Kathy Keena's office to address why justice was not served when the corruption surfaced. And this is where I said at the beginning, we're going to give her the benefit of doubt that she was green. She didn't really know. These officers had been doing this for so long. She's new. She's eager to be the hero of her community. So she trusted these officers. One thing that Philip has said is that during his jury trial, when they were picking the jurors and he got to ask the question, he asked the jurors one question. Do you believe that the police will lie to secure a conviction?
He asked the jurors this. Did he have a public defender or what?
Well, he asked his attorney to ask that one question.
Mm-hmm.
So the attorney asked that question, and anybody that said they believed that the police officers would lie, Kathy Keena struck them from being on the jury. So everybody on the jury was people who said they believed that the police were doing the right thing. They believed that the police would not be dishonest. Okay.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
That
she struck anybody that would be in his favor, pretty much.
Well, that's part of that game, but they also get to choose their jurors, right? I mean, he's supposed to be able to choose his jurors.
And he was not. She struck anybody that would be in his favor, anybody that would be a peer. And also, he was 22. All of his peers, he said, were 40 and up, and one black man. Everybody else was white. And so he's like, these were not my peers. These definitely were not my peers. So we understand that initially, Kathy Keena, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt, say, in the beginning, you were green. You were just trying to find your way. You wanted to be the hero of your community. But the question I would pose to her, which I have posed to her multiple times, and initially I got blocked from her social media, but now I'm unblocked. I guess because they want to see what's happening over here. But the question I would ask her is why, when the Metro Gang Strike Force was discovered, that these officers from multiple municipalities and cities all over Minnesota, why, when it was discovered that they were corrupt, unethical, abusive, and completely rogue, why did she not see the need to question their involvement in any of the cases she convicted or prosecuted? That would be my question, and that's been my question. Why? Okay, so why, when you saw initially all this was coming out. You didn't say, let me pay attention to this. Let me see. Maybe some of these cases that I prosecuted on with their information, maybe we need to look at these again. Did she ask herself that? That's what I want to know. Second, once Andrew Luger at the FBI level disbanded them and said, you can no longer operate as a task force. You cannot. You're done. Why did she not then say, we have to open these cases? You know what I mean? And that was and so I'm seeing people in the comments saying that Luger covered it up. There's obviously cover up everywhere, but Luger is the one who brought forth as much as anybody has by disbanding that office. Of course, there's still cover up. Of course, they're still protecting Minnesota. Of course, there's still, the politicians are still the politicians, and on that level of what they do, so that's the question I would pose. So police, and now I'm going back to the informant, met Philip a year before this robbery ever even happened. Like, how did they know? How did these informants foresee, I'm going to need to be an informant in a year because this guy's going to commit a murder? So police strategically placed these jailhouse informants against Mr. Vance along his journey because they had studied him. So understand, a year before he was in jail for that stolen gun, they were listening to his phone calls. They were watching his moves. They knew he didn't have a lot of local family support. But I do want to make one thing clear real quick. I do want to make one thing clear, that he's always had support. Philip is a man of privacy, and he's wanted to protect his family and keep his family private. So it's not that the support and everything has not been there. It's just he's wanted to protect them, and they got to live their life the same. So he's protected their privacy and their life moving forward. So, but what they did was they used things against him, like not having a lot of money. They could see what was getting put on his books, what he was doing during that year. So I believe they felt he was an easy target. He was an easy target, didn't have a lot of support, and they knew the conversations that were happening. They knew that maybe as a kid he had gotten into some trouble, never anything serious, like prison time type stuff. But, he was a young guy trying to find his way, maybe linking up with the wrong people over time, but has always had a very good head on his shoulders. And when he realizes okay, this isn't a good situation, he's never a follower. He's always been a leader. You guys shouldn't be doing this. I'm just going to, pivot and go in a different direction because I feel like this isn't a good situation. But I feel like they definitely use that, all that to his benefits, or to their benefit. So, and I talked about Kathy. Oh, Kathy Keena also admitted first at her opening statement, she cried to the jury. Now that's complete prosecutorial misconduct, to sway the jury emotionally. And she was allowed to do that. There was no objection made.
The prosecutor did?
The prosecutor did. She cried during her opening statement.
Can you spell her last name? Sorry.
Okay, it's Keena.
Keena, okay. I thought it was Keenan, but I'm glad I wrote it down because I'll look.
And now so she started out as a prosecutor, first prosecutor as a female into Dakota County, but she is now the head of that office. So for the 22 years that she wrongfully convicted him, she's continued to grow and place herself as high up. This really reminds me of Amy Klobuchar. I also worked with the Mayan Burrell case, so it really reminds me of that.
I was thinking
how they took those steps.
Well,
Yes.
remember, and we kind of talked about this a little bit, that they have something, but they have something. And so either she is being coerced into continuing this lie for 20 years, or she's working with them because she's getting something out of it. And if she is on the same path like Amy Klobuchar, that means that they're grooming her for something bigger, and she's acting as a willing puppet.
I don't think
this is what happens with future Democrat county attorneys.
Mhm.
I think
There
it's
it is.
easier than that. There's no incentive for them to actually go back and look because it's going to be a stain on them, and then they'll lose. So there's no incentive to go back and look at their trash. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
but
not
I
even
think
a.
it's more about her reputation than it's because she's anticipating something bigger in the future. I
fail
I
upwards
bet
always,
you
right?
$10.
Our whole life.
She'll at
Yeah.
some point she's going to announce, well, her success and look at her
I'm
track
running
record.
for. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kamala
Yeah.
Harris, Kamala
For sure.
Harris, however you say your name. Same way. She was an prosecuting attorney in California.
Yeah.
Look where she went.
Yeah. So,
No
and
doubt.
another thing is, I don't know if you know, and I don't have the statute handy, but I don't know if you know that in the state of Minnesota, if the state has to vacate a sentence or admit exoneration that they made a mistake, it automatically rolls over to a civil office where now the state is responsible to pay out for the years that you were wrongfully convicted and incarcerated. So if you look at Phillips, and I want to say that Phillips' case had so many Metro Gang Strike Force officers touch his file. And all these other cases in Minnesota of these guys also claiming wrongful conviction, which I believe them as well, had a few of the officers. So for them to admit that Philip is wrongfully convicted and they made a mistake and they need to vacate his sentence and exonerate him, they're going to have to open all these other cases. It's going to open a floodgate of admittance that they made a mistake and they allowed it to happen. It's going to open up their pocketbook like no other. It's, and we say, Philip,
this is more incentive for them not to do it. Right?
Exactly.
You get that. I mean, I get it. I know that it sounds incorrect because it's immoral, but that is exactly their incentive. Why everybody is shutting the F up about it and not. I think a good lawyer could take this on. Is there anybody?
We have a great lawyer. We have a great lawyer. We have a great team, and we have filed the petition. We are moving forward. And I just want to touch into a little bit of that.
Yeah, I didn't want to get too far ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. But I do want you to know that I'm just laying out this. I really wanted to lay out a lot about Kathy Keena on this because I'm hoping you guys will invite me back and we can talk about more. Because there's another office we want to talk about, and that's Keith Ellison and the CRU. But I'm not going to get into that during this one. We really want to talk about Kathy Keena. I really want to lay that out.
Like our love language, so you can come back anytime you want.
Perfect. So, I just want to say that, and recently, and TJ, call you TJ is okay?
Yep.
That's what's on the screen. Okay. An anonymous source recently informed Unicorn Riot. Do you follow Unicorn Riot at all?
Unicorn Riot?
Yeah.
No, I've not.
Okay. So I want you to look them up. They've shared a lot about a lot of these wrongful convictions, and they've really been sharing a lot about Philip's story since November 2024, like a lot. Yeah. So recently, Unicorn Riot released a story that an anonymous source had reached out to them knowing the real killer's name of the Sabrine's murder, and it's not Philip. They've also mentioned that there is an accomplice that's in Stillwater Prison in Minnesota that knows the real killer's name. So these are not names that's being shared publicly until that information is. Somebody just put the story in the chat.
Oh, that was me.
Oh, perfect.
I just learned I can do that, so I utilized it.
Oh, nice.
Excuse me. That's awesome. So I'm just curious right now, and this is another question I'm going to pose to the public and the people in power of Minnesota. Where are your investigators with this information? I understand that anonymous sources are not great, fruitful sources, but you have a name. So what are we doing with that information? It should be something like right away. Like, I mean, I would think like if my kids were like, I know who ate all the cereal and left the box empty, I'd go to that person and be like, go throw the box away, but it's like, where are they at on that? That would be a huge question. What do you have to say, TJ?
Well, the thing is with the way the police are nowadays, again, that would just, it doesn't seem like they're motivated to do this kind of work, right? Like, this is said and done. So in order for anything to change on that, well, that means I got to say they're wrong too. Again, the House of Cards and everybody involved in that House of Cards is doing everything they can to keep that House of Cards together. And it just, they've all become part of that blob. Now, I think interviews like this and all your advocacy and all this great stuff really is what you're asking for. This is what you're asking for is, hey, and hopefully folks see this and say, become that straw that breaks that camel's back and tumbles that House of Cards and this whole deal, this bullshit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to say this, that the Metro Gang Strike Force, there's an officer, I live in Florida, and this is so interesting. One of the officers that retired, his last name is Pica. He lives 20 minutes from me here in Florida. And, you know, I've always been like, man, I wish I could run into him at the grocery store and ask him what his thoughts are now.
You know what he looks like?
I do. I would definitely recognize him if I run into him. So,
yeah, but a lot of like, this is what we talk about, like, and it's in the law enforcement, but military, you know, any of these, like, these types of jobs, it's the, you know, the good old boy system. Like, people look out for each other, they cover up for each other. This is one reason why there's a problem with accountability, is because they're more loyal to each other than they are to the truth or to justice.
Man.
And and then where do you go from that? So then their principles are compromised. And again, who do you complain to? Because everything funnels through them.
Yeah. And so I'm not sure. What are we going till 9 p.m. Eastern?
About 10 minutes after.
Okay, perfect. So let me just jump into why the petition that was recently filed and why the original conviction was defective. I'm just going to drop these real quick, and then we can do questions if you want any more.
Oh, I'm sure I have more questions.
Okay.
And anybody that's in the chat too, just
we can scroll through there. I do see
questions there, and we'll pull them up.
Okay, perfect. So Mr. Vance's conviction is defective, and I want to state because, one, it relied on false evidence provided by Melissa Stites, who provided inculpatory evidence against Mr. Vance. Through her affidavit, she explained that she was pressured by members of the Metro Gang Strike Force to falsely accuse Mr. Vance of murder and to assist the prosecution through the provision of false testimony and statements. Her affidavit also explains that she was explicitly instructed by police officers to give a false testimony in his case and at his trial. She has recanted her trial testimony and stated that she never heard Mr. Vance make any statement indicating that he played a role in this robbery or this killing. It's also defective because it relied on evidence provided by Regina Hagerman, who testified before the grand jury in Mr. Vance's case about threats that Mr. Vance claimed to have made against Hagerman's then fiance to obtain a lawful basis to search the cell of Mr. Vance's co-defendant. One thing about Regina's testimony, so if anybody knew in the 90s and early 2000s in Minnesota, with the Metro Gang Strike Force roaming around, if the police rolled up on you at a bus stop and you know that you're dabbling in things, you're selling weed or you're doing what, or people or whatever, and the police roll up on you, you do not want to be seen talking to the police. That was absolutely not. And this is how they approached Regina. They approached her at a bus stop, a bunch of people around, daytime. Hey, we want to know what you know about Mr. Vance. So she's like, whoa. She felt like they put her life in danger with that situation. And so she also recanted her original testimony because she was scared of the police. So and then ended up recanting that she was threatened, intimidated. It's also defective because it relied on false evidence provided by Maynard Cross, who also provided inculpatory evidence. Through his affidavit, he's done 3 affidavits because each time that they've had to update it, he's continued to say that his initial affidavit that he provided about the circumstances of the murder, which he claimed to have learned from Mr. Vance, actually originated from conversations that he had with the Metro Gang Strike Force police officers. They wanted Cross to incriminate Mr. Vance. Cross has recanted his full testimony and stated that he has no knowledge or any fact that indicates Mr. Vance played any role in the killing. His conviction is also defective because the indictment itself is completely defective because it relied on false and inculpatory grand jury testimony provided by the people that I laid out, in addition, Jacqueline Ezell. Mr. Vance's conviction is also defective because of multiple other lies that were told and people that were put in place to provide inculpatory evidence and lie on the stand about Mr. Vance. Mr. Vance. They also did not follow his alibi. He had an alibi the night. They never pursued his alibi. He had a Sprint phone at the time, and he was on the phone, or somebody was using his phone at the time of the murder. And the officers told him they were going to go get that information from Sprint that would give his location. They would have been able to locate his location. When Sprint told them that they had 90 days to get those records, otherwise the location would be erased. We believe they did get those records. We believe that is some of the records that was destroyed by the Metro Gang Strike Force because it did show that he was not at the crime scene. But they ended up telling his team they were unable to get that documentation within that 90-day period. But they told him at 30 days, oh, we know we need to go get this. So what'd you do for the next 60 days? You just waited for it to just go away? I don't believe that's the case. I believe they got it and they destroyed it, and then they lied and said it's no longer obtainable. Mr. Vance's, he was denied his 6th and 14th Amendment right to effective assistance of trial counsel. His trial counsel and appellate representation fell below the standard of reasonableness and prejudicially affected the outcome of the proceedings. He was also denied his 6th and 14th Amendment right to effective assistance because they failed to present the alternate perpetrator. Now, this is what I want to say. I want to go back to that Unicorn Riot anonymous release. There was an alt perp that was brought to the table at the original trial. The baby mother of this alt perp was interviewed. The baby mother's mother, so the grandmother, was also interviewed. And Philip Vance was told by the judge he could not bring them to the stand. The judge suppressed their testimony and their information.
See, and that's the kind of stuff that I don't understand how, we can hear this story and understand, and by all means, I trust you. I believe you, at least. Yeah. You know what I mean? And, but the snapshot or the actual goings on inside the courtroom is usually not that exact story. You know what I mean? And so that's what I don't get. And what you just said right there is where the judge strikes this for whatever reason. I think that should be recorded, right? I think. And then this appellate court and your appeal, I don't know this whole process, but I think I'm hoping a good lawyer can slice right through all this stuff that you're explaining.
The petition, I got to tell you, the petition is so solid. The petition is so very solid. I do want to say something about what you just said was that we should talk offline too, because I could bring you up to more speed in more time than this. But I want to say that one of the informants is the sister to the head investigator that was working with the Metro Gang Strike Force. So you have an officer, his sister was an informant. Another informant was Melissa Stites. She was kind of like rescued by this police officer, and he was mentoring her kind of like maybe as I don't know, a daughter or something, but like just helping her out of a life of victimization in the crime in Minnesota. So now she had an allegiance to him. Now, this one's probably going to blow you. The judge was the uncle to the officer and the sister. Colleen McManus and Officer McManus. The judge was McManus. Now,
Well, I think there's like conflict of interest things right there, right?
Extremely. And so I'm going to end this real quick, this little piece. And then we'll jump into questions. So, my last bit about, sorry. Okay. So the petition asks really just for, really everything to be vacated, and we're asking for an evidentiary hearing. So collectively,
that's what you were reading right there. Is this is
pieces from that? Yeah, why
okay.
it's defective and what was violated.
Defective,
collectively,
yes.
the Metro Gang Strike Force report that was released. They did it like from 2006 to 2008. They did put this report together and they released it in 2009. So the Metro Gang Strike Force report, alongside witness affidavits, recantations, demonstrate that Mr. Vance did not receive a fair trial due to due process violations stemming from coercive tactics employed by investigators acting unlawfully and in bad faith, resulting in nearly 22 years of unjust imprisonment for Mr. Vance based on comprised investigations leveraging false testimony. The evidence we have on this petition is so solid, and it's the evidence of Mr. Vance's innocence and wrongful conviction is substantial, and it justifies granting him an evidentiary hearing at the least. And that's what we're asking for. So
I think just because the task force was disbanded because of corruption, everything. I feel like Amy Klobuchar did something like this, where I said something.
She did.
Mayan Burrell. And she used Mayan's name throughout her whole run into presidency.
Okay, so my memory does serve me a little correctly on that aspect of my early memories of that swamp creature. So I don't know what.
That's not the worst thing anybody's called it.
No. That's legit light.
Rebecca, can you see the comments, the questions? Do you want to
yeah, so let's see. Yeah. Were the police, let's see. Putting us up here. Were the police working with the Latin Kings at the time? There's evidence in 1977 the government was involved with some gangs running drugs, weapons, and prostitution.
Okay, so I wasn't sure. Rebecca, you and I talked about this. Should I share just some thoughts to provoke some thoughts with the audience about that? Okay.
I think so.
So there's a lot of things that happened in Minnesota for the last, 25, 30, 40 years that definitely are not coincidence that have led to a lot of this injustice. There's some dots being connected and some belief. Now, I'm going to just put a disclaimer, like I'm a nobody. I've done a lot of research, and I'm finding that there's a lot of connections to these officers with the Metro Gang Strike Force connected to dealings with the Latin Kings, among other gang groups in Minnesota. There's some possible thoughts that there was some illegal activity that the Metro Gang Strike Force was either aware of or involved with happening at Sabrine's. Because I will say this, after the murder of Khaled al-Bakri, the family of his family, rooted in that community, owned the store, did all this. His brother ran it with him. They had other family here. They all fled the United States. They went back to their originating country. So why? I would pose that question. Why did they flee? Because if Philip Vance was convicted and he's in prison, you couldn't be afraid of him. And he was a little 22-year-old kid. So why did you flee the whole country? That would be my first question. And I'm just doing these thought-provoking because of my own research. Second, Why would if this information about this anonymous source that is sharing, obviously somebody has known this name for a little while. And now that Phillip's case is taking front and center, now they're like, oh, we want to help. We want to help attain justice. So this name, I'm sure, has been known because, like I said, there's a connection to the name that was provided to some people that were interviewed at the very first investigation. So if you have connections and then that was never followed by investigators, I would say why? Because now we're 22 years later and now this name is coming up again over here.
Yeah, I think you can definitely create quite a story with all that. But ultimately, there is ridiculous reasonable doubt, right? With all this stuff, like there's no way this man should be in prison. That's hands down. That's it.
We shouldn't be waiting. We shouldn't be waiting. And Kathy Kena continues to delay the justice, and we want to know why. She continues. Yeah. She's blocked multiple appeals. She blocked multiple opportunities for him to have a post-conviction relief. And now with this petition, she has deferred, and we'll do this on another segment, but she has deferred to, we'll wait and see what the CRU says before we
respond. Does it have to go through her? This petitioning and all that stuff has to go through her office? It's a state conviction, isn't it?
It has to go through her as the prosecutor at her office because she's Dakota County and it was tried in Dakota County. And we're asking them to do an evidentiary hearing. So it has to go back to the original office of, and it's fine. Like, it's cool. We want everybody to cooperate. We want everybody to do their part, but they haven't done their part.
No doubt.
The jump. So what are we trusting them for? But it's just how it's set up. And he did do an application with the CRU in 2021, and they've sat on that application. It's now 2025. However, 2 other men that filed applications with the CRU in the same year have since been released, and they've either been vacated or commutated. So why is it taking this long for Phillip to get a response from this office made up of prosecutors? They're not attorneys, they're prosecutors, and a retired cop is their lead investigator, Nick Foster.
It just seems, it is definitely ridiculous. And it's not the first ridiculous story of a man wrongfully convicted, especially in that good 2 decades of the, late 80s.
We see people in watching that, there's other people. This is one case. This is a systematic chronic problem in Minnesota.
Now, what kind of advocacy groups? You said you were affiliated with. I heard a name earlier, but I don't think I wrote that down.
I'm not affiliated. I'm a standalone independent. But we do have a team. We do have a team of people that we've put together of grassroots and abolition views that are, that we call them the Free Phillip Vance team. And there's several of us that, we have different roles and whatnot. And
right on.
Yeah. So, and what's funny is when I lived in Minnesota, I was approached by the BCA and they were like, oh, there's this position opening up to be a community liaison. You can help people navigate the justice system. And what I was like, I do that already. Why would I want to work for your office when I know that you're corrupt and that you do things and then I have to follow your policies and I can't say all the bullshit, right? Oh,
well, you know who you're talking to, right? Well, you say bullshit all you want to us too, but you know who you're talking to. 2 people that are trying to infiltrate a place that we both hate as well.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
That's what our goals are. And this is kind of what it takes sometimes is you got to get inside and be part of the madness or whatever, try and stop the madness.
I definitely understand that. I feel like I will definitely, because we have some allies and some accomplices inside different places that we, that we are able to.
Well, it's logical.
Yeah.
It's the moral
but
thing
for
to
me,
do.
I like to be so verbal and I like to just put it all on blast. And, so I'm like, we'll get the allies and the accomplices that are quiet on the inside and, but it looks like somebody said they get paid as reliable criminal informants. Yeah, that's true. Robert said that. That's definitely true. The informants do get paid. Oh, I wanted to say in Kathy Kena's closing statement to the judge, on the original conviction, she also said that. She admitted in front of the judge on record that, I got to find her exact verbiage, but she said pretty much like, yeah, I paid their rent. I mean, I did that. I paid his baby mama's rent for this. Yeah, so what? Big deal. And the judge didn't say anything.
You sound like Joe Biden. Joe Biden did we denied that $2 billion, and sure enough, the prosecutor got fired. No,
Right.
they don't even care to hide it. Because they're all in it.
No. They know that we know that they know that we know, and we know that, but nobody is willing to the right people. And like, we can, and absolutely we should do this because it's got to keep the story alive, right? Because as soon as we stop talking about it, then it's dead, and then there's nothing left for him at all whatsoever. But they don't care. And who do we have, again, like, who do we have to go to that can do something about this? Because the entire government that has the power to make these decisions and to, help people is silent. They know. They do know.
They do
They're
know.
not
They know.
ignorant.
They know because they're having meetings behind the scenes. And then how can they all be on the same page if they're not communicating, but they're all on the same page of the wrong side of justice? And I'm like, if I sat down with these people, how could they look at the facts of this and be like, oh yeah, he's guilty? There's no way. There's absolutely no way.
How many, and I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask for the sake of this.
Yes.
But when he was going through the hearing and the trial and all that kind of stuff, I'm in a podcast. I'll get to you in a second. Sorry. My door is locked and shut, but that doesn't matter to kids sometimes. So when he was in the trial, how many people testified on his behalf, in his defense?
None. His attorney, that's why we have a serious ineffective counsel. They presented no defense. They presented no witnesses on his behalf. They told him not to testify. He wanted witnesses, and what he wanted presented, the judge suppressed. It would have shown this alt perp from the day one. Yeah.
How do you go into being, in the jury, and then not be able to see how one-sided it is and come to the conclusion that clearly he's guilty without any sort of defense whatsoever?
Exactly.
There had to have been, I don't know, because it's a lot of just normal people that are
unbeknownst to the law.
And they're coached by the prosecutors and the judge. They really are just coached by the state, the team in the state, and the defendant.
Like the question he asked at the beginning, and then they went and took those people out. The people that were left over, by default, they believe that the law enforcement is there on their behalf to keep them safe. They're the good guys. Yeah. And so they're going to give them the benefit of the doubt, regardless of what they've done or haven't done, because of what their position is. But we all know here that those positions in law enforcement, government, oftentimes the people that seek those seats the hardest are the ones who are the worst candidates, because they crave the power and the control that it gives them over other people. Yeah. And so when you have law enforcement, and that's the catch-22, like we do need, we need people to be safe. We need a way to be able to get people justice when something does happen to them, because we live, look at the world, like there has to be a way to protect each other.
Yeah.
But the people who seek these positions are criminals themselves. Exactly.
Really, truly. And that's what, a lot of people said, like the Metro Gang Strike Force was the worst gang themselves. And of course, it's sad, the gang with the badge. So
you gotta take away the incentives. It's all about the incentive structure. That definitely is what creates all of this. And the thing is where you talk about quotas or whatever, like you said, hey, look I bump up my resume by more convictions. And so here's the numbers, and that's just the first few years of my career. I don't know
Yeah.
who Philip Vance is. Whatever are you talking about? That was 20 years ago, and that was part of
Mm.
this. Are you saying that's some man's life? Some folks really do think on this end that they don't give a shit. But this
Yeah.
man's been sitting wrongfully accused, convicted. I mean,
Yeah.
So
Listen,
PDF,
Oh.
just real quick. Sorry, I dropped a link to a PDF file while I was sitting here. I just Googled Metro Gang Strike Force in McManus, and it came up with a file of it was released in 2009. So I'm assuming it's revolves around like their disbanding and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Because just skimming through it really quick, it was like, oh well, they did this and they did this and they did this, and so But I mean, it's anybody that I've talked to about this situation, and I'm up in Bemidji, so I'm not down the metro, and I am not originally from Minnesota either. So I'm catching up on a lot of metro stuff. But anybody that I've talked to about the metro who knows people down there, they're like, oh yeah, Metro Gang Strike Force, like they were really bad. And they have a
Really bad.
reputation to this day.
Yeah.
no doubt.
Yeah, they really do. They really do. And their effects are long lasting because these people are many of the people that were under their lies and corruption are still in prison. They weren't getting little 2-3 year sentences. They were hitting people with 20, 30, 40 life sentences. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
Well,
if
that's
you
what
had-
Philip thought was a life sentence.
Yeah,
And
you
no
had a piece of crack the size of a
30
quarter.
Yeah.
That was Joe Biden. That was talking about
Yeah.
a piece of crack the size of a quarter. If you got
Yeah.
caught with any kind of drugs, there were mandatory 10-year
Yeah.
minimums.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Biden was the author of the crime bill.
That's what I'm talking about. That was it. That was part of the crime bill.
Yeah.
So
No
that's
doubt.
what they did as reward.
That
for
gave those
creating a
guys
victim.
carte blanche. Really, that was their AUMF back in the 90s against the gangs and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Crazy. Well, we have lots. We have a lot more we can dig into.
Yeah,
We'll
we
chat
should do
some
this
more.
again for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll come back anytime. Maybe one time we can get Philip on here on audio. We can't do
Do
video.
you
obviously,
have
but-
a website or something to share that folks
Oh,
can
yeah.
go to?
You can so you can follow Facebook. We have his Facebook page. We have him on Instagram. It's just free Philip Vance. And then Miss Nikki Holiday. It's just like my name is on the title right there. No space between Miss and Nikki. But he also has a website, www.freephilipvance.com. Philip has only one L in it.
I was going to ask that. Good one. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for coming on. And
Yeah,
we
thanks
will
for having
definitely do it again because this is long-term issue. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
over 20 years already. And still looking at, I mean, this is a test of endurance.
Yeah.
So-
And he's I would love to have him on. Maybe I can get him to call in one of these times because just to get to know, like, he's an amazing person, and to be so sound in mind and so solid as a person after this, like, it's impressive. Like, he's a mentor to people inside prison. He's a mentor to people outside prison. He's, he's there. He's still a father from inside. Like, he does everything, that he can do through the phone and the videos and the in-person visits to still be present for the community, for his family, for people close to him. And it's really inspiring and amazing. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
So thank you so much, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
And if you just real quick, I feel like I shouldn't, anyways, I'm just going to say it. LPMN.org if you want to find out any more information about the Libertarian Party of Minnesota. And we are definitely going to be keeping up with your story. And I've, through you, I've been meeting other people and being made aware of other stories too. So this is kind of just opened the floodgates. And we had our state conventions last weekend, and this was one of the things, just the justice issues, the systematic ones, and being able to, this is one of the things that I am kind of clinging to, where I would like to lead our party. and making one of our center things, because if we don't have accountability at our government, then what are we doing?
Yeah, for sure.
So, and this is
Hey,
where
I
it's-
appreciate you. I appreciate you guys wanting to get to the truth too. Like it's very much appreciated.
Yep.
Very important.
Yeah,
Hopefully only good things will happen from here on out. So
for sure.
all right.
Thanks so
we
much.
will we'll talk to, and don't, next Wednesday we'll still be on next Wednesday too. So
Awesome.
all right.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.